last year, the world's fastest growing cybercrime ecosystem didn't actually emerge in, the hidden dark webs of Eastern Europe.
Right.
And it wasn't built to hack billion-dollar bank vaults either. It was built to hack the device sitting in your pocket right now.
Exactly.
Like imagine you decide to upgrade your entire house with the world's fastest, smartest, most high-tech locks. You invest heavily in this beautiful new security system, but then you leave the blueprints to the house sitting right on the front lawn, and you leave the back door completely wide open.
Well, honestly, I mean, it's worse than that. You've essentially weaponized your own upgrades against yourself.
Oh,
Yeah, you've built a high-speed system that intruders can just use to clean out the house faster than ever before.
okay, let's unpack this. Because that strange mix of rapid technological advancement sitting right alongside glaring vulnerabilities it's exactly what happened in the Latin America and the Caribbean region post-COVID.
It really is.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a genuinely fascinating and honestly slightly alarming April 2026 threat intelligence report from Recorded Future's INSIT Group.
Yeah, it's a massive report.
Huge. And they analyzed the cybercrime landscape across the LAC region over the past year, so 2025. And for you listening, whether you are, managing third-party vendors, studying global economies, or literally just relying on a smartphone to pay your bills, the mechanisms detailed in this report are incredibly relevant.
Absolutely.
So how did this region end up leaving that proverbial back door open?
Well, to understand the data in this intelligence report, you have to look at the massive structural shift that happened almost overnight. I mean, the region experienced this perfect storm.
Right, the pandemic.
Exactly. During and after the pandemic, necessity forced a massive, rapid digital development. Entire economies moved to the cloud, remote work became the standard, and the use of digital payments just absolutely exploded.
Just skyrocketed overnight.
Right. But that technological adoption massively outpaced the region's security maturity.
Meaning, the technology got faster, but the protective measures kind of stayed in the past.
Precisely the issue. Organizations were rapidly adopting, software as a service platforms to keep business moving, but completely failing to implement strong access controls.
Right.
Or even basic multi-factor authentication. And you combine that fragile digital infrastructure with intense real-world pressures.
The economic side of things.
Yeah, the report highlights severe economic instability throughout the region. We're talking inflation, strict currency controls, high youth unemployment, and, political volatility.
So people are desperate.
Exactly. When you have a highly connected, tech-savvy youth population facing a sheer lack of traditional economic opportunity, the informal economy naturally expands. Individuals seek alternative income streams.
And cybercrime is right there.
It presents a highly attractive, high-reward, low-risk proposition.
And the people defending these networks, they know they're outmatched. According to a World Economic Forum survey cited in the report, only 13% of respondents in the LAC region express confidence in their country's preparedness to respond to a major cyber incident.
It's startling.
13%. Which brings us to the core target of all this crime, the smartphone. The data here is wild.
Oh, it really is.
Android commands an 84.59% market share in South America. And furthermore, 37% of adults in the region use mobile money accounts.
Right.
Entire populations are doing business on their phones, relying heavily on instant, frictionless payment systems like Brazil's PIX.
Because the mobile phone isn't just a communication device in this environment. It is the primary and often the only computing device for a huge portion of the population.
Right, they don't have laptops.
No, it acts as their bank, their storefront, and their office. And the Android ecosystem, just by its open nature, allows for more sideloading of applications.
Which means downloading apps from outside the official vetted app stores,
Yep.
right?
Exactly. And that makes it a highly fertile environment for deploying mobile malware.
I look at this and I see countries building a massive financial skyscraper on a really shaky foundation.
Yeah.
But, I have a question about the criminals' logic here.
Okay.
If these countries know they have legacy infrastructure and they know they have limited security resources at the enterprise level, why is the focus so heavily targeted on everyday mobile users?
That's a good question.
Why not just hack the big banks directly?
What's fascinating here is that the criminals are simply following the path of least resistance. And that path has been fundamentally altered by new financial technologies.
How so?
Think about how real-time payment rails actually function. They are designed for one primary thing, speed. They are built to remove friction from transactions.
Oh, right, because nobody wants to wait 3 days for a transfer.
Exactly. But when you remove friction, you inevitably weaken identity verification controls. It is significantly easier to socially engineer a stressed individual into handing over an authorization code on their phone than it is to breach the hardened, multi-layered perimeter of a major financial institution.
Ah, makes sense.
Because of this massive mobile reliance, the individual citizen's phone has literally become the back door into the broader financial enterprise.
They don't need to break down the bank's vault door if they could just trick you into handing over the keys while you're texting.
Yes.
And from what the report shows, the criminals aren't trying to invent new, suspicious platforms to pull this off. They're just hijacking the communication tools the local population already trusts implicitly.
The reliance on WhatsApp and Telegram is staggering. Threat actors are heavily targeting WhatsApp for smishing.
Smishing, so that's SMS phishing.
Right. They send localized, highly convincing messages, impersonating local banks or requesting payment for fake invoices. And then on the back end, they use Telegram leveraging its end-to-end encryption and bot automation capabilities to coordinate their own illicit activities and sell stolen data.
What really surprised me was the infrastructure behind this. You would assume, given the volume of crime in Latin America, there would be this massive, isolated Spanish and Portuguese dark web ecosystem.
But there isn't.
Right, there isn't. They aren't building their own local high-tier forums. They're going straight to established English and Russian special access forums.
They are utilizing platforms like Russian Market, Exploit, and dark forums because why build the infrastructure when a globalized criminal supply chain already exists?
And the scale is massive. The report noted there are 29,000 exposed credentials from top LAC organizations, so spanning healthcare, government, and finance, sitting right now on the Russian market alone.
It's a huge vulnerability.
And a vast majority of those credentials were stolen using info stealers.
Yeah, info stealers are a specific, highly pervasive type of malware. They are designed to quietly sit on an infected device and harvest passwords.
Just lurking there.
Yep. But more importantly, they steal session cookies.
Okay, wait. Explain session cookies for us.
So a session cookie is what keeps you logged into a website after you've entered your password and your two-factor authentication code.
Oh, so you don't have to keep logging in every time you click a new page.
Exactly. If a criminal steals that cookie, they can bypass your two-factor authentication entirely.
Wow.
In the first half of 2025, the undisputed king of these info stealers in the LAC region was a malware family called Luma C2. It was targeting users across Argentina, Paraguay, and Mexico, primarily to steal credentials for financial fraud and cryptocurrency theft.
But law enforcement actually struck back, right? There's a major coordinated operation to take it down.
There was. It was a massive takedown operation.
Yeah.
International law enforcement agencies successfully disrupted Luma C2, seizing approximately 2,300 malicious domains that were integral to the malware's command and control infrastructure.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and honestly incredibly frustrating. The report notes that almost immediately after this major law enforcement victory, a different info stealer called Vidar simply filled the vacuum in the second half of the year.
Yeah, it just stepped right in.
It feels like a giant, high-stakes game of digital whack-a-mole. How are these networks bouncing back so fast?
It's less like a carnival game of whack-a-mole and more like cutting off the head of a hydra where the blood supply is entirely cloud-hosted.
Okay, terrifying image.
Right. When law enforcement took down Luma C2's domains, they didn't arrest all the developers or delete the source code from existence, they just disrupted the routing. The resilience of these networks is driven by the cybercrime as a service model. These aren't isolated hackers coding in basements. This is a modular, decentralized industry.
Like a legitimate business almost.
Exactly. If one service provider gets taken down, the criminal operators simply migrate to a new server, rebrand, or buy a subscription to a different info stealer like Vidar and just continue operations the next day.
It's corporate efficiency applied to global theft. And the report highlights something else that has completely supercharged this resilience. The integration of agentic AI.
Yes. This is a critical pivot point in the landscape. Historically, one of the best, most natural defenses an everyday user had against a phishing attack from a foreign threat actor was the language barrier.
Like the weird typos.
Exactly. If a hacker in Eastern Europe tried to write a phishing email to someone in Brazil, the bad grammar, the weird phrasing, the incorrect localized slang, those were your immediate red flags.
Right.
AI has completely erased that barrier. Agentic AI allows threat actors to instantly generate flawless, highly convincing, culturally nuanced phishing messages in native Spanish and Portuguese.
So no more weird grammar.
None. It allows foreign operators to scale their attacks globally without needing any local expertise whatsoever.
So the automation essentially guarantees the attacks will escalate, because they aren't just stealing passwords to sell for a few bucks on the dark web anymore. They're moving on to holding entire institutions hostage.
Yeah, the ransomware data is grim. In 2025, Recorded Future tracked 452 ransomware incidents impacting the LAC region, which accounts for about 6% of the global total.
Okay.
And it is hitting the largest economies the hardest. Brazil saw 128 recorded attacks, followed by Mexico with 78 and Argentina with 63.
And when you look at the targets, it's chilling. Like the top 3 sectors hit were healthcare, manufacturing, and government.
It's very intentional.
Yeah, these attackers know exactly what they are doing. They're deliberately targeting organizations that hold high-value data and face critical life-or-death operational urgency. I mean, a hospital simply cannot afford to have its patient systems locked down for a week.
No, they can't. And we need to clarify how these attacks actually operate now, because they don't just lock systems immediately anymore.
Right.
Almost all of these groups now utilize a mechanism called double extortion. Hackers will breach a network and dwell inside it, sometimes for weeks, quietly mapping out the servers.
Just watch.
Yep. Before they ever deploy the ransomware to lock the computers, they quietly copy and exfiltrate terabytes of sensitive data back to their own servers. Then they pull the trigger and encrypt the hospital or government network.
So even if the hospital has perfect backups and can restore their systems without paying the ransom?
The hackers move to phase 2. They threaten to leak all that stolen, sensitive data publicly on their dark web name and shame blogs if the ransom isn't paid.
That is brutal.
The report cites a devastating example where a breach exposed the sensitive data of millions of Paraguayan citizens. National ID numbers, physical addresses, health service records, all just dumped on the dark web.
Unbelievable.
The collateral damage to the everyday citizen is immense and permanent.
Well, stealing data via ransomware relies on exploiting digital networks. But what happens when the criminals figure out how to exploit the actual physical hardware we use to pay for things?
This is where it gets really sci-fi.
It does. That brings us to a terrifying evolution in near-field communication, or NFC tech. The report details an Android Trojan called Phantom Card. When I read this section, my jaw actually dropped.
It is a profound shift in how financial theft is executed.
Okay, let me see if I understand the mechanics of this. So I'm sitting in my living room, and I get an SMS message to pay a utility bill.
Okay.
I open what I think is a legitimate app on my phone, and it asks me to tap my physical bank card to the back of my phone to verify the payment, which, is a totally normal, everyday action now.
Right. We do it all the time.
But in reality, that app is malicious. So wait, if they manage to get malware onto my phone, why do they even need me to tap my physical card? Can't they just drain the digital wallet I already have set up on the device?
You would assume so, yeah. But digital wallets like Apple Pay or Google Wallet use device-specific tokenization. They don't store your actual card number. And the data is heavily encrypted, making it very hard to extract directly.
Okay.
What Phantom Card does instead is turn your infected phone into a live, invisible extension cord.
An extension cord to where?
To the criminal. The moment you tap your physical card against your own device, the NFC chip transmits the authorization data. The Phantom Card malware captures that live, unencrypted signal and instantly relays it across the internet to a criminal's device.
Wow.
That criminal is simultaneously standing at a retail point-of-sale system or an ATM, perhaps thousands of miles away. They hold their device up to the machine, and the terminal thinks your physical card is right there in the room. They withdraw your cash in real time.
It's a live relay attack. So I'm tapping my card in Mexico City, and an ATM in Eastern Europe is spitting out my cash.
Exactly. To anchor this in historical context, think about how credit card fraud has evolved. We used to worry about criminals skimming the magnetic stripe.
Oh yeah, those plastic things on gas pumps.
Right. The industry innovated with EMV chips to stop that. So criminals responded by developing shimming to steal chip data. So the banking industry pushed contactless NFC payments for better security. Phantom Card is basically the criminal supply chain providing a technical bypass to that specific innovation.
It's proof that as soon as a new lock is invented, the blueprint for the key is already being drafted.
Exactly.
And this isn't just a few rogue coders pulling this off. The financial motivation is so massive that heavily armed organized crime syndicates are adopting these tools.
Yes, the gang involvement is a major development.
The report highlights that 54 members of the violent Venezuelan street gang Trendiragua were recently indicted by the U.S. Justice Department for a massive ATM jackpotting scheme. They used a sophisticated malware called Plautus to essentially command physical ATMs to just empty their cash reserves on the spot.
It perfectly demonstrates the fusion of traditional physical street gangs with highly sophisticated cyber tools. But if we connect this to the bigger geopolitical picture, the line blurring between street gangs and cybercriminals is only the beginning.
Right.
The report reveals an even more complex dynamic when we examine the behavior of nation-state actors and ideological hacktivists.
Yeah, let's look objectively at what the intelligence data is showing us here. The Encrypted report outlines that Advanced Persistent Threats APTs, which are almost exclusively state-sponsored intelligence groups, are overlapping their operations with common, everyday cybercrime.
It is a significant and deliberate shift in tactics. Traditionally, an APT is engaged in high-level espionage, stealing state secrets, or conducting strategic geopolitical influence.
Right, spy stuff.
Exactly. But the data shows groups like Tag 144, also known as Blind Eagle, conducting campaigns in South America, particularly Colombia, that blend state espionage with pure financial motives. And they're utilizing common, cheap, remote access Trojans you could buy on any forum.
The report also notes that Chinese state-sponsored groups, identified in the data as Tag 141 and Storm 2603, have been observed deploying common ransomware variants, specifically Lockbit and Babuk, across critical sectors like agriculture, energy, and telecommunications in the LAC region. But I have to stop you there. Why would a highly sophisticated state-sponsored operation from a global superpower use an off-the-shelf common ransomware tool like Babuk? Don't they have massive budgets to develop their own untraceable, cutting-edge cyber weapons?
Oh, they absolutely do. And that is precisely why they don't use them for these specific operations.
Wait, really?
Think about the strategic brilliance of this from a cyber warfare perspective. If a nation-state uses custom, highly sophisticated malware, intelligence agencies and cybersecurity firms can reverse engineer it and immediately trace its digital fingerprints back to a specific government military unit.
It's like leaving an ID badge at the crime scene.
Exactly. But if that state actor deploys Babuk, a cheap piece of ransomware that literally any amateur hacker can buy on a dark web forum, it provides the ultimate digital camouflage.
Oh, wow.
It looks like a random teenager committed a financial crime rather than an act of state aggression. It provides complete plausible deniability.
It's the ultimate disguise. And according to the INSIC Group's assessment, some of this state-sponsored activity from China in the LAC region is likely aimed at protecting and monitoring massive economic investments, like the Belt and Road Initiative, sovereign loans, and large commercial interests.
You're touching on a vital point. It's cyber operations trailing right behind physical world economic investments.
But we also have to talk about the hacktivists. Historically, these are groups motivated by political ideology or social unrest.
Right.
You see groups like Mexico's Cronus team, historically known for defacing government websites to make a political statement. But the data shows a massive pivot. Several of these ideologically driven hacktivist groups are transitioning to ransomware as a service for pure financial gain.
Yeah, all about the money now.
They are teaming up into organized syndicates, like one mentioned called Five Families, which has targeted entities in Cuba and Brazil. So what does this all mean? Are we essentially seeing the privatization of cyber warfare?
That's a perfect way to frame it. But we need to understand how ransomware as a service, or RAS, actually facilitates this. Think of it like franchising a fast food restaurant.
Okay.
The top-tier criminal developers create the core product, the sophisticated malicious code, and they handle the complex negotiation and payment infrastructure on the dark web. Then, these local hacktivist groups or affiliates buy a subscription to use it.
So they don't need to be master coders.
Exactly. These local operators don't need to know how to write a single line of advanced code. They just need to know how to trick a local target into clicking a link. They execute the breach, deploy the ransomware, and the core developers take a percentage of the profits.
It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for causing catastrophic damage.
It really does. And there is a crucial structural factor that makes the LAC region so attractive for these hybrid operations. Over 95% of businesses in Latin America and the Caribbean are small and medium enterprises, or SMEs.
So mom and pop shops, local businesses.
Yes. They operate with very tight margins, lack robust IT infrastructure, and rely heavily on cheap third-party platforms. They simply do not have the budgets or the personnel to defend against an AI-equipped, state-backed threat actor using a franchise ransomware model.
No way.
Consequently, the region inadvertently serves as a highly lucrative, real-world testing ground for these new tactics and malware variants before the criminals deploy them globally.
Which brings us to the ultimate, so what's for you, our listener? We've gone on quite a journey today, from the rapid, unsecure, post-COVID digital expansion and that staggering 84% Android market share, to the AI-powered hydra of info stealers like Luma and Vidar.
It's a lot to take in.
We explored the mechanics of a live NFC relay heist from your living room, and finally, this murky, camouflaged world where nation-states and political hacktivists operate indistinguishably from common cyber cartels.
It is an incredibly complex and highly adaptable ecosystem.
And you might be sitting in a corporate office in North America or Europe or Asia, listening to this and wondering, why should I care about the cyber readiness of a medium-sized enterprise in Brazil or a local municipal office in Mexico?
Right.
The answer is that global business is entirely interconnected. An attack on an undersecured SME in South America or a supply chain vulnerability in the Caribbean can and will directly impact global enterprises.
Without a doubt.
If your third-party vendor has weak security, their backdoor is essentially your backdoor. You cannot isolate digital risk geographically.
That interconnected risk is the defining challenge of modern cybersecurity. And as we look forward, the LAC region isn't just standing still accepting this reality. They're rapidly adopting even newer technologies to fight this localized fraud.
Like what?
We are seeing major discussions around implementing central bank digital currencies and the rollout of massive centralized biometric identification systems designed to solve the very identity verification problems we discussed earlier.
Upgrading the locks on the house all over again.
Exactly. But it leaves us with a critical question to ponder. By creating these massive, centralized digital fortresses to solve today's localized fraud problems, are these nations simply building a single, infinitely higher value vault for the world's most sophisticated AI-equipped threat actors to crack tomorrow?
Because if you build a bigger vault, but the fundamental blueprints are still sitting on the front lawn, the game doesn't end. It just gets much more expensive. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Insect Group's intelligence report. Keep your digital doors locked, and we'll catch you next time.